If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. In this episode, we are joined by Udo Erasmus, founder of Udo's Choice and author of the book Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. Udo has an 8-step process that takes into consideration all the elements of nature and human nature, including physical health, mental health, presence and awareness, life energy, and being in harmony with nature and humanity. Udo's background includes studies in biochemistry, genetics, biology, and nutrition, as well as a master's degree in counseling psychology. Udo, welcome to the Aging Well podcast.
Well, I'm glad to be on, and I'm aging well.
Great. Well, let's have you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I came out of Europe. I was born during the Second World War. I'm 82 years old. I was born in Poland when it was part of Germany. We were refugees and fleeing from the communists when on dirt roads in horse-drawn hay wagons with no military presence. And the Allies, which we like to think of as the good guys, because that was us, right? They were shooting at us from planes using refugees as target practice. So we got in the middle of that. It's a long story. My parents came from Latvia and Estonia. And I got left behind. I ended up in an orphanage for a while, and eventually we all got reunited. My recommendation for that is don't raise your kids in a war zone. It was intense. I remember I was always like this. I was shy, withdrawn, didn't know what I could trust, never felt safe. I remember being hungry, and I got into books because books were safe. When I was 6 years old, I was listening to adults argue, and it always made me really uneasy because it was always so intense. And intensity was not my thing, right? And it occurred to me, man, there must be a way we can live in harmony. And then it's a little cocky voice, I'm going to find out how. And that's been my driver all my life. Came out of a war, just like, God, there must be a better way to live than this. And now we're sort of drifting in that direction because we're not doing the homework we need to do, but that's a whole other story. And then when it came to going, I was a born scientist. I was always experimenting with stuff because I was always trying to figure out how things work. Because when you know how things work, that gives you certainty, right? It's like science is about predict and control. Well, you have to know how to predict it. You have to know what it is. And so I got into science, and then I got into biosciences. I wanted to know what life is. Of course, we didn't study life in biology, even though it's the study of life, right? We studied form and function. We never studied life. We never, ever got a handle on. I thought we'd end up with a beaker of something, light and shining, and, oh, there's life. No, we started with living creatures, and when we were done, they were dead, and we got a tracing on a drum and figured out that if you shoot electricity in a nerve, then you get a muscle contraction. But we never got to life. Then I went into psych. Psychology means study of soul. I said, soul, that sounds like something kind of cool. Must be something good. We didn't study soul in psychology. We studied thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. Then I went into medicine because I wanted to know what health is, because they call it healthcare. We only learn about disease. It was like one disappointment after another in some ways, right? Learned a lot, but not the thing that I was looking for. And you'll see why that's important in a second. Then I left medicine because they told us a doctor should always sound as though he knows what's going on, even when he doesn't. And we call that lying on the farm. And that didn't sit right. So I left medicine, ended up in biochemistry and genetics, and then left because I didn't find what I was looking there either. And then I got into psychedelics and when I did my first LSD trip, that kind of melted the door off my childhood personality, my war personality, my war child personality. And I realized, oh my God, there's so many ways we could live. There were so many ways I could live. And then it took me about 10 years to figure out how I wanted to live. But it opened the door. And then I got into the spiritual stuff. And my question was, what did the masters experience that made them able to live like they did and do what they did? Because their life was like poetry. You read some of that stuff, it's poetry. But you can't write poetry if you're not feeling something. So I said, I want to know what they felt. What specifically for me, of course, it was Jesus, because I'm in Western culture, right? And I didn't want a religion named after me. And I, didn't want to get nailed on a cross or anything. I just wanted to know what was the feeling. There must have been something there. And eventually, I got in with a Christian group, and I said to make it short, I looked the guy in the eye and I said, it must be possible to see God and live. And I thought that would be the beginning of a deep conversation. And he completely went crazy. He jumped out of the chair and was flying. His arms were flying around his head, screamed at the top of his lungs, "You're from the devil. You're from the Antichrist. Get out." So then I ended up on the street, and I went into nature to clear my head. And I was really confused, and I really wanted to know. Maybe I'm asking a question I'm not supposed to ask. But then I woke bolt upright in the middle of the night, and there was a being made of lights. No labels, no words, but embodied a message. And the message I could put words to was, I am come not to judge, but to love. And that one experience completely reset my entire life, and also answered my question, right? And then it became my standard. How do you live up to that standard? I am come not to judge, but to love. And then I got into doing a stillness practice, because this experience became a memory. And in that stillness practice, what you do is, you close your eyes, you see, how still can you be? And how deep can you go into that? And how long can you stay there? And how lightly and slowly can you breathe? And what do you experience when you go into that place? And that's where your peace lives. In the core of our being, every human being, every point in space in the entire universe is peace. And that peace isn't limited to the body. The center point is in the body, but then it radiates out all the way to infinity. And in that peace is an unconditional, empowering love that happens to be a fraction of sunshine that is filtered through 93 million miles, then through the Earth's atmosphere, then through plants, then stored in bonds between atoms to make molecules. We eat those. When those bonds get broken in our cells, that fraction of solar energy is released, and now we call it life. And that life, just like I am come not to judge but to love, the message of the masters to humanity, is also the message of life to your body, life to your 60 trillion cells. I am come not to judge but to love. Unconditional. So every human being's individual essence is unconditional, empowering love. And I got that from experience. And by the way, there's the life that I was looking for in the beaker, right? And the fact that our foundation is peace, and that peace is everywhere, and in that foundation, we as individuals are unconditional, empowering love. That all of a sudden that makes your life pretty livable. So if then you're not looking for love outside. Then if you feel the need for love, you just go where that love already is, right? If you want peace, you go where that peace already is. It's in every human being. And if we talk about aging well, there's nothing that makes you age better than peace and love. Now, there's physical things you can do too, of course, right? And then out of that shine of love, that is solar energy, that is individual essence, that is also perfect health, because it can't get sick and never dies because it's formless, right? Same with the peace, right? That shine of love out of you into the world, I call that inspired purpose. And that's like positive mind. That's like good intent. And it's the bridge between life and the world. And if you go into that, you find your purpose. Because the purpose, if you feel cared for, you only have one purpose left. It's to help. It's to help. It's to do what needs to be done. It's to, maybe if you want to get big about it, then they say, oh, how can I make the biggest splash for good that's possible in the time that I have? And now my life is simple. It's not about me anymore because I'm good, right? So that's, and then I got poisoned by pesticides. I got married. The marriage broke up. I took a job as a pesticide sprayer because I wasn't feeling peace and love. I was angry, really angry. And I was really careless, and I got poisoned by pesticides. And when I got poisoned by pesticides, I went to the doctor. Said, what do you have for pesticide poisoning? She said, nothing. And so I took my biochemistry and genetics background and went into the research journals, learned everything I could about health and nutrition, disease and nutrition, and ended up getting into oils because it was really confusing. The one study I read says omega-6 is an essential nutrient. That means you have to have it. You can't make it. You got to get it from outside. If you don't get enough, long enough, you die. But if you bring it back in adequate quantities before you die, then all the problems that come from not getting enough are reversed, because life knows how to make a body if we make sure we provide the building materials. And they all come from food, water, and air. And this next study I read was omega-6 gives you cancer and kills you. So it's like, you have to have it and it kills you. Like, right? So they said, well, I must be missing something. Either somebody's lying or I'm missing something. And I assumed they were being honest. You can't make that assumption these days as much as we used to be able to. But I decided, okay, I must be missing something. And that forced me into looking deeper into how oils are made. So they're the most sensitive of our nutrients, damaged by light, oxygen, and heat. Omega-6 is only 1/5 as sensitive as omega-3s. So super, they need the most care. We give them the least care. We throw them in the frying pan, right? And I said, oh my God, I can't get healthy in oils like that. We should make them with health in mind. And so I developed a method for making oils with health in mind, where no light, oxygen, or heat gets to the oil from the time it's closed in nature's packaging in the seed, through the pressing, the filtering, the settling, the filling. Then they go in dark glass bottles. Then a box gets put around it to cut the light out completely. Then they go in the fridge in the factory. They go in the fridge in the store. They go in the fridge at home. And you use them in foods after they come off the heat. Never, ever, ever, ever for frying. Because the better an oil is for you, the worse it becomes when you put it in the frying pan. So, and then I spent the last 45 years tearing around the world to like about 40 countries, talking about oils made with health in mind. Started an industry. I got put in the Hall of Fame in Canada in the health food trade, because that's where we were active for doing that. So, between divine experiences and self-made disasters, a learning gets taken place and a lot of good things can happen. So there's my short story.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was really fascinating. I like the montage. I could kind of picture it going through the different decades, going from World War II in the 40s, and then the science portion in the 50s, and the psychedelics in the 60s, and the Christ revelation in the 70s. So you kind of put me through your life, and I really, really, that was really cool. I really appreciate that story. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that you just shared, we could probably do an entire podcast on each one of that through your life journey. Well, I'm really interested to hear about your book, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill.
Yeah. Tell
us about that book and why you wrote it.
Okay, so it came out, I told part of that story. I got poisoned by pesticides, and I was looking for self-help because the doctors couldn't help me. And then I came across the story that, the omega-6s are, you have to have them, and then they give you cancer and kill you. And I was like, no, that doesn't make sense. And I had to go deeper, look at the processing. And then what I learned, it was like, wow, I went to university for like 8 years. I never heard any of this kind of stuff. that I was learning about oils. I said, gee, there must be other people who could benefit from what I'm learning. And so I met a guy, he wanted to make oils, and then he couldn't because his business went down. So I moved in with my mother to write the book because I said, I want to write a book on fats. And she said, and I can do it evenings and weekends, or I can write full time. Took me 6 years. And she just said, yeah, you can move in. You can get free room and board here. I was 41 when I moved in with my mother's to write the book. And my friends were all partying. And sometimes I'd sit there and say, why am I doing this? It's the weirdest thing, some guy who got nothing, crazy guy sitting down, I'm going to write a book, right? And, but there would always something would happen that would say, no, you're on the right track, keep going. So I literally took me almost 6 years to write the book. The first version was called Fats and Oils, and then the second version was written in 1993, Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. And I literally wanted to bring out everything about oils that people need to know in practice to do well with oils. Because by this time I knew, okay, they're really sensitive. Omega-3 was established as an essential nutrient that you have to have in 1981, the year after I got poisoned. And I thought, oh my God, and I found out 99% of the population doesn't get enough omega-3s for optimum health. And it was like epiphany. Oh my God, if we could make omega-3 oils with health in mind, we could help almost everybody. And I was like, oh my God, because it feels good when you help, kind of feels good in your chest when you help, just like it doesn't feel good in your chest when you hurt people. And it was like, oh my God, I have a purpose. I finally found a purpose because I never knew what my purpose was. And I was like, oh my God, we could help everybody. And then in 1988, after the book was done, we started with flaxseed oil, because flaxseed oil is the richest source of omega-3s. We did a tour in a van without air conditioning through the United States in 1988, in the hottest months, July, August, half of September, half of June, 101 days, 85 cities, 35 states, 17,000 miles by road, and talked to everybody that would listen to us about oils made with health in mind. And started a buzz because we were on fire. I mean, we worked our butts off, like worked all day, drove all night from place to place. I don't remember ever feeling like I was working. It was so fun. We were so inspired by being able to do this. It was not about the money. We didn't have any money at the time. It was literally just 100% bootstrapped. And then flax oil became the second highest selling oil in the health food industry in 2 years from that buzz we created. And everybody wanted to work with us, and we would only work with people if they had refrigeration in their storage, because our oil needed refrigeration. And I'd have I would have a short interview with people who came and wanted to carry the oil. And it was like this: do you have refrigeration in your place? If they said yes, I'd hand them off to my driver, who was also the deals maker, to see if they could make a deal. And if they said no, I said, are you willing to bring it in? If they said yes, I say, let us know when you have it. And if they said no, I said, this is a good time to end the interview. We would not work with people who wouldn't take care of our precious oil. And we had standards. We set all kinds of standards. I had no business background, good science background, no business background. And we created a business from scratch. And now I think flax oil is $1 billion a year industry. But it's flax oil made with health in mind. This is not junk. There was linseed oil that comes from the same plant, linseed and flax is the same plant. But we made a distinction between linseed oil, which is sometimes boiled with lead and is used to paint furniture to protect it, and flaxseed oil, which is fresh, made with health in mind, organic, and is good for health because the omega-3s are essential and are missing in most people's diets.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging. Well, there are so many different directions I can go with this interview. And one thing that we talk a lot on the podcast about is kind of what I call well-centered fitness, which is the spiritual, physical, emotional, intellectual, and social aspects of wellness. But I want to kind of stay on the fats here for a little bit, and we'll probably circle back to a little bit of that, because I think you have a lot to really talk about with that, with your history. But let's kind of start with cholesterol. Why is cholesterol so scary? Or a better question is, why is there so much misinformation about healthy and unhealthy oils?
Well, I think there are, okay, so let's talk about the oils. There are a lot of people, and there's been pretty much every year that I've been doing this work, there's pretty much been somebody who wrote a book demonizing seed oils and now omega-6s. And right now, I think there's about 3 or 4 books on the go. They're all demonizing seed oils and omega-6s. They don't use seed oils. They're toxic. Omega-6s will kill you. And these are people, not one of the people who wrote a book like that has ever talked to me. Not one. Not one, right? Because, and what they did is they realized, one of the things that I found out, when the oils are made by industry, they make them for a long shelf life. And that means they could make them where I live, and they could sell them in Tokyo, and they could sell them in Johannesburg, and they could sell them in Berlin, and they could sell them in Moscow, right? So you have a global market if you can get a shelf life. But these things are sensitive, so they're easily damaged. How do you get a shelf life? Well, they figured it out. You treat it with sodium hydroxide, which is a corrosive base. Then you treat it with phosphoric acid, a very corrosive acid. Then they bleach it to take the color molecules out, because they absorb light, and the light then damages the oil. And now when they've done that, the oil is rancid and stinks. So they have to deodorize it. I call it destinkerize it, right? And to destinkerize the oil, you have to heat it to frying temperature for half an hour to blow off the rancid molecules. It's called deodorization. And when you've done that, you have a colorless, odorless, tasteless oil. Then they stick it in plastic bottles. And that's what lines most of the shelves of most of the stores. In the process of doing that, though, about 0.5 to 1% of the molecules are damaged. And so that doesn't sound like much, right? Oh, well, it's just 1%. And that's what the scientists at the Oil Chemist Society told me when I asked them, why do you do it when you know it does damage? It's just 1%. What the hell is your problem, right? So that's kind of the answer I got. So then I decided, okay, let me do the math. How many damaged molecules would I get in a tablespoon of an oil that is treated that way, that is 1% damaged? And if you haven't heard the story, then I want you to guess how many damaged molecules would be in that tablespoon. There's a reason for doing that will be very helpful to your audience.
I would say in the millions.
1 million. How many?
How many millions?
Yeah.
Let's take a lucky guess. 50.
Okay, 50 million. You want to guess too?
I'm assuming it's high. If Dr. Armstrong said millions and you're like, how many? I'll shoot low. I'll say 3 million.
3 million. Okay. So 3 million has 6 zeros, right?
Mm-hmm.
And 50 million has 7 zeros. The 7 zeros is 12 zeros too short.
Oh my.
The actual number is 60 quintillion. That's a 6 followed by...
I don't even know what a quintillion is.
I know. I'll break it down. It's a 6 followed by 19 zeros, and it's more than 1 million damaged molecules for every one of your body's 60 trillion cells in 1 tablespoon. And people use 2 to 4 sometimes. And people put it in the frying pans. You got to multiply that by another 3 to 6 times because of the damage done by light, oxygen, and heat in the stupidest thing we've ever invented to do to our food, frying, right? And then they're in plastic bottles. Oils swell plastic, so plastic leaches into the oil. We're hearing a lot about how that doesn't belong in the body these days. And then they're not made with organically grown seeds, so you got pesticides in the oil. And then you do that for 30 years, so you got to multiply that by 11,000, because that's about the number of days in 30 years. That's how much damaged stuff you're putting in your body. right? If you're 12 zeros too short, that's 1,000 million billion trillion. Okay, and it's a little more than a trillion times too low. Now, most people will guess like that. And what I say to them is, well, you're underestimating by 1 trillion times how much damage you're doing to your body. Would that be enough to get you to thinking about what you're doing? And would you maybe get your oils from seeds, nuts, or oils actually made with health in mind? And it's like, yeah, I wouldn't. When I asked a question in Ireland, I said I would canoe back to Canada. I'd be more likely to. I wouldn't be very likely to survive, but I'd be more likely to survive that way than I wouldn't get on the. I say if you got on a plane and you found out it was 1 trillion times more likely than you thought it was to crash and die on the plane, would you get on the plane? I told him, I would. Nope. I would canoe back to Canada from Ireland, right? And so because we're doing something to ourselves, I think it's important to point that out because nobody talks about it. I did an interview for a major TV station one time and talked about this stuff, and they were blown away and they loved the interview, and they were going to play it on the news that evening. And I had the evening off, so I thought I'd watch myself on television because I don't get to do that very often, right? I'm always at the other end of it. So I watched the news and they never played it, but they played an ad for Wesson Oil. So you know what happened? The interviewers loved the interview, obviously newsworthy, obviously would get attention. And then I went to the editor's desk and said, no, we can't run that because we make money on Wesson Oils. Those are the damaged oils. That's one of the damaged oils, right? So they never played it. It's never made the news. Never ever made the news that if an oil is 1% damaged, a tablespoon will get you 60 quintillion damaged molecules. And because it's not news is why our estimates are so low. The industry doesn't talk about it. When we come out of a time, my parents' generation, they kind of used to say, the industry would never do anything that was bad for us. The government would never lie to us. That kind of stuff. They were very, very trusting and naive. But this is like the industry began in the late 1800s, became big in the 1920s, and the degenerative diseases increased in that timeline. And my summary of it is, more health problems come from damaged oils than any other part of nutrition, and more health benefits, therefore, will accrue if you give your body the oil change that it needs, from dirty, damaged oils to clean, healthy ones. And so that's the industry of making oils with health in mind. Yeah. That came from a researcher in Germany. Fatty degeneration means all of the diseases that involve fats in their, and basically they involve degenerated fats in their cause. And in fact, fats are involved in cancer, in cardio, in diabetes, and that kills more or less 70% of the population, right? You get the fats right. The good fats, when they're not damaged and not filled with pesticides and plastics, actually lower most of the cardiovascular risk factors. Omega-3s lower triglycerides. They lower blood pressure because they relax arterial muscle tone. They lower CRP, C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory factor because they're very powerfully anti-inflammatory. And the body makes other very powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory molecules out of the omega-3s. And then what else did we have? High cholesterol sometimes. That's a whole other can of worms, cholesterol. And there's a couple others. They make platelets less sticky. The omega-3s, the saturated fats will actually make platelets more sticky. So fatty degeneration is the diseases that come from oils damaged by processing, and both by industry processing and by food use in the frying pan. So that's called collectively fatty degeneration.
Okay, so in this podcast, it's all about living proactively to, of course, age well. What is essential for successful aging?
Aging? Well, it depends. It depends how you look at it. First of all, the peace in you never ages. And there's research that shows that when you sit still and you get out of your crazy monkey mind head that's going 1,000 miles a minute about every stupid negative thing possible, if you get out of that and you can just relax into the peace that is in the core of your being, it actually reverses aging. And Deepak Chopra talked about that. And there's research that's been done on it. The transcendental meditation people have done a lot of that research. And so that's number one. Number two is feeling loved, feeling loved instead of feeling lonely or feeling, heartache. Heartache, some people say, oh, he died of a broken heart, right? Disappointment, of course it's a broken heart, but then it's also all the craziness that happens in the mind when your expectations get shot, right? So if you feel loved, then you like to be around because it feels good, right? And if you feel good about being alive, then you say, hey, I want to be around as long as I can, and I'll do whatever it takes to be around as long as I can. And that means if I need to change my thinking from negative to positive, I can do that because it's just thoughts. They're all made up anyway, right? Either I made them up or my culture made them up or my parents made them up or somebody in school made them up, but they're all made up, and I can look at a person and say, well, no, there's a creature of God that I should have some respect for and some admiration for. Or you can say, I don't like the way his tooth looks, or his nose is crooked, or or I saw him snort and I hate it when people snort, whatever it is, right? And then you can get all negative about it and you're making it up. But if you don't feel loved and you don't feel peace, and then you feel discontent, and when you're discontent, then you look for problems, or you create problems, or you express discontent into the world in destructive ways, and that feeds back to you too. So if you're not inspired, if what's the opposite of inspiration? Depression. Well, if you're depressed enough, people check out their body. People destroy their body if they're depressed enough, because they're so bummed out being alive because they don't see any hope. They don't see any future. They don't see, so if you're inspired, you can't be depressed. Inspiration is the cure for depression. Okay. So you're inspired. Oh my God, what else can I do? Oh my God, where else? Oh my God, look at this, how beautiful this planet is that we live on. And you start to look at it in a different way, and that'll slow down aging. And then you're going to do the exercise you need to do to keep body and soul together. And then if you need to change a food habit, like stop frying, well, it's not so hard to do. It's cooking water. And actually, if you think about it, nature's mandate for creatures who eat is fresh, whole, raw, organic, local. For humans, probably more plant-based than most of us are now. And when you eat like that, that increases your lifespan, because when you cook and you fry foods, you actually turn nutrients into toxins. So it's not hard to do that if it's proactive is easy when you're on top of the world. Proactive is not easy when you're totally bummed out, right? And then the next one is survival smarts. That's the protective part of mind. Well, that involves skills that you can learn, and it involves courage. And courage, it just means heart, having heart. That's where your power is. Courage is the power of the love that is your life, right? And so you use that to protect and save and serve, and you preempt the problems that can happen wherever you live. Like if you have tidal waves, you want to build your house above the level of that the tidal waves hit. There's a sign in Japan that says, "Do not build below this point," and there's a whole bunch of houses below that point, right? So that's preemptive, proactive, and and a certain amount of wisdom involved in doing that proactively. And then the next one out is people. When we were kids, we used to play soccer. That came from Europe. Soccer is the big game in Europe, right? So we'd play soccer in school, and somebody would miss the ball and kick us in the shins, and we would scream at them, "You make me sick!" Right? So even as kids, we know that that other people can affect our health. So what do? Pick your friends. If you want to be depressed, go with people who put you down. If you want to be inspired, go with people who encourage you. So you get to choose that. That affects your health. And then there's the natural environment. If you live in a dump, it's going to stink. That's probably not good for health, right? So live in clean quarters, be close to nature. Nature is our mother in a way. There's the pace in nature is very nice, and the trees are filters for dust, and they make oxygen for us to breathe, and we then make carbon dioxide for them to breathe. So every in-breath you could say thank you, and every out-breath you can say you're welcome, right? And so you want to hang out in nature as much as you can, safely, because nature is 99% safe and 1% powerful. So you want to be careful, And then the last one is to come to terms with the fact that you live in a terminal condition called the human body, that one day that's going to check out, and you live in an infinite universe, and to be okay with both, and to be aware of both. And if you have things to think about and you have anxiety, it's helpful if you remember that there's a peace within you and a love within you that are not affected by any of your anxiety issues, any of your anxiety thoughts. Like what can change will. So the anxiety is about things that change. So that would be body, that would be mind, would be emotions, would be social, and would be natural environment. But peace and unconditional love and inspired purpose and infinite awareness don't change. So give them equal time, right? So you have things to be worried about for your body. I get that, right? Because sometimes things move faster than you want them to move, and you can't control everything that changes. Well, if you're in peace, you can let it change and be okay with it and live within change, but you have an anchor. And it's important to remember that you have that anchor. When people do trauma, they get into the trauma and the memory of trauma, and they bring it up again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And sometimes they live their whole life in memory of trauma. And somewhere along the line, the cure for trauma is that you find your way back to living from life for life, because your life was not traumatized. Your peace was not traumatized. Right? Your body might have been, your mind would have been, your emotions might have been, you might have been sexually traumatized. And I don't want to diminish the intensity of the pain of that. But at the same time that you're in that pain, something in you is loving you unconditionally, and that peace is not traumatizable, and find your way back to that. And then you may need to make some changes in something so that you're not exposed to trauma, including, not going there in your thoughts. Once you process it, obviously there are often tears and emotions and healing that needs to happen. But ultimately, you have to step into life and out of trauma again. I had my trauma in the war. It was pretty intense, and I was 26 when I finally realized, oh my God, I've been complaining about the war. It ended 24 years ago, right? I'm still complaining about it. I'm in a completely different continent, a different country. There is no war here, right? And I'm still complaining about a war that ended when I was 2, right? And it said, and you know what? Something took perfect care of me through all my dramas and all my traumas. And I have never given that any acknowledgement. I have never said thank you. I have never said, wow, what a friend you've been. Life to me took me through all that. And that was part of my big turnaround. It's like, oh my God, I should make friends with my life because it's incredible. It weighs nothing, runs everything. It's omnipresent in me, omnipotent in me, omniscient in me, knows everything. If I need advice, why don't I talk to life? I got the resident expert hanging around in my own body, right? Instead, I go to people who give advice with agendas. And the agenda could be money, or the agenda could be that they're serving some other something. And life has only one purpose, which is to love you unconditionally and empower you as long as possible. There's an expert without agenda. The only agenda it has is make my life amazing.
I mean, that kind of sounds like one of two of our mantras we have here on the Aging Well podcast. One of the things Dr. Armstrong likes to say is carpe momento, which is seize the moment.
Seize the moment, yeah.
Right? Make every moment count.
Yeah.
And while you're in that moment, have gratitude. And one of the things that we like to do is we spell gratitude with 2 T's in that gratitude. So gratitude with attitude. Pretty clear, pretty concise.
Yeah.
Right?
Gratitude with attitude.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Gratitude with that. Gratitude with 2 T's.
Yeah. And gratitude,
so nothing confusing there.
Yeah. So sometimes we try to manufacture gratitude. But when you get into the stillness and the beauty and the magnificence of your own being, gratitude is a natural expression of that. But we tend to try to do mindset stuff and gratitude by mindsets. So then we try to figure out, and it's okay, it works, but it works better if you're just feeling grateful for no reason at all, other than life is just so beautiful when you're in touch with it. Right. So all you have to do is go to that deeper place and it's all there. Gratitude with attitude. Right.
Yep. So, yeah. Pretty clear, pretty simple. Definitely not confusing.
Yeah.
But you know what can be confusing?
What's
fats. Fats can be confusing for many of our listeners.
Fats, yeah.
We got saturated fats, unsaturated fats, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, short chain, long chain, medium chain. Are you able to boil down the necessary knowledge on this podcast?
Yes.
Or less?
Yes. Although, if we really want to get into it, that takes a whole hour. But okay, so in the whole world of fats, there are only 2 things that you need to pay attention to. And that's the omega-6 and the omega-3 essential fatty acid. Because those you can't make but have to have, and you have to bring them in from outside. And if you don't get enough, you go down. And if you don't get enough long enough, you die. And if you bring them back, everything that comes apart when you don't get enough is reversed and you get your health back. That's the only thing in fats that you really, 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 really need to pay attention to. It's kind of like saying, okay, well, calcium is an essential nutrient. Well, if you never, ever get any calcium, you're going to die. If you never get any magnesium, another essential nutrient. If you never get any vitamin C, if you never get any vitamin D, you're going to die. That's how important these essential nutrients are. Everything else is optional. Monounsaturates, they're pretty stable, but they're not essential. And your body can make those out of sugar and starch. Saturated fats, your body can make those out of sugar and starch. So you don't need them in your diet just because your body can make them out of potatoes, right? So you want to build your intake around the essential fatty acids. The omega-3 is 5 times more sensitive than the omega-6, so it needs the most care. You need to get the ratio right because the same enzymes convert them into all kinds of other things, including hormone-like regulatory substances in all your cells. So you got to get the ratio right because they both use the same pathways to get there. And if you get too much of one, it crowds out the other. If you get too much of the other, it crowds out the one. And then we're in a place where omega-3 is down to 1/6 of what people got in 1850. And we've doubled or even maybe 10 times our intake of omega-6. So that's one of the problems. Plus, they're damaged by the processing. So there are 2 problems with omega-6s and those seed oils, which is one is they're damaged, and the second one is we got the ratio wrong. We need more omega-6 to balance it out. Okay? So saturated fats make your platelets more sticky, so they tend to get you towards heart attack. and they make you more insulin resistant. So they tend to take you toward diabetes. And they're made, by the way, saturated monounsaturated fats are made by eating more carbs than you burn. Because when you eat more carbs than you burn, the excess carbs have to be turned into fat in your body. That's just the law in the body. Okay. So, so people say, oh, don't use saturated fats because they make your platelets more sticky and they get you insulin resistance. But omega-3s make you more insulin sensitive, and they make your platelets less sticky. So actually, the only reason why saturated fats cause problems is because most people don't get enough omega-3s. When you make sure you get in your omega-3s and 6s undamaged, unpesticided, in the right ratio, saturated fats are not a problem anymore. The only other fats that, trans fats in the margarines and shortenings, they've been sort of demonized, not around the world, but in North America and in Europe pretty much. Those are damaged fats. They're damaged by heat. So you want to avoid the margarines and shortenings and foods that contain them. There are still foods that don't have to be labeled, like airplane foods. The airplane foods can have trans fatty acids in them, and they won't be on the label. So you want to pay a little bit of attention. But literally, if you make sure you get enough omega-3 and 6 in your diet, you can relax about everything else. And then you can eat seeds and nuts, whatever it is, because every seed and nut has a different fatty acid profile. Well, if you make sure that you get the omega-3s and 6s, that you get your baseline covered, then you can eat other stuff on top of that. We use twice as much omega-3 as omega-6 because omega-3s are the one that's missing so much in the diet and has been lowered so much in the diet. So we use more omega-3s than omega-6. Flax oil made me omega-6 deficient because it has 4 times more omega-3s. That's too high. That ratio is too high. So that crowds out the omega-6s. I got dry eyes, skipped heartbeats, arthritis like pain in my finger joints, and thin paper skin from using flax oil as the only source of fat in my diet. And I fixed it by eating sunflower seeds because they only have omega-6s and no omega-3. And then I said, I think we need to make sure that we get a better balanced oil. And there is no single oil that is perfectly balanced. And we then made a blend that we call Udo's oil in order to address that issue. Because I thought, well, I'm trying to get people healthy. I can't do that with something that might actually make them sick. And so we made the blend. You can eat that blend forever and never become either omega-3 or omega-6 deficient. And omega-3s give you more energy. I call them the fat-burning fire starter. They actually turn on fat burning in the body. So if you have fatty liver and you take omega-3s, undamaged omega-3s, they will burn the fat out of your liver. Your body will just burn the fat for energy. And then when you start using those oils, then we say lower your carbohydrate intake because carbohydrates will override the essential fatty acids if you get too many of them. So lower the carbs, make good oils your most important fuel. And the reason for doing that is that there are essential nutrients in oils, but there are no essential nutrients in carbohydrates. None that are, there are essential nutrients in carbohydrates, but none that you can't get elsewhere. In oils, there are essential nutrients that you can't get anywhere else. So carbs are the least important food in our diet. And you get more energy, and we worked with athletes, 40 to 60% increase in their performance if they did their sport to exhaustion within 30 days of taking a tablespoon per 50 pounds of body weight per day of the blend that we work with, mixed in their food and their intake spread out over the course of the day. 40 to 60% on average. Yeah. And we worked with strength athletes, and we worked with endurance athletes. We worked with boxers, and we worked with football players and hockey players and just about martial artists, bodybuilders, weightlifters. Very consistent. So did that make sense of it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, good.
And I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said omega-3s help with liver function?
Yes.
Or was that omega 6s?
No.
Okay.
The threes are the threes are better at probably just about everything, and I think that's because we're getting a lot of omega 6s, even though they're partially damaged. We're not getting the omega 3s. So whatever, and because omega 3s are required by every cell, if you're not getting enough omega 3s, there's going to be problems in every cell. So they do a lot of, they help keep bones strong, and they increase uh, ability to build muscles, and you recover quicker, and injuries heal quicker, and hair grows faster, and nails grow faster. We wanted to sell them through hair shops because we'd give them 25% more business. We didn't do it, but it was a thought we had, right? And they can increase IQ by 3 to 9 points, and they elevate mood and lift depression, and they're very powerfully anti-inflammatory. Some derivatives that are made from them in the body. And what am I missing? They're super important in the retina, for vision, liver function, kidney function, reproduction. Women get depleted because they're not getting enough omega 3s. Their children deplete them. Each child gets less than the previous child. Each child depletes the mother further. They think that's why, on average, if you get all of the kids in America and you measure their IQ, the oldest have the highest IQ, the youngest has the lowest IQ. On average, there are other factors involved, but if you do the statistic big time, then that's consistent. Not only that, but women get conditions 2 to 15 times more often than men because of the depletion of essential fatty acids during pregnancy, because the mother has to build a brain in her womb as well as maintaining the brain in her head. And if you don't have enough, the kid will take it out of your head. And that's why sometimes they call it baby brain, right? And they've shown that women get depression, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, collagen inflammatory, and autoimmune diseases 2 to 15 times more frequently than men. And they think it's because women are depleted of essential fatty acids during childbearing. So what they say is women need to make sure they get a reliable source of both essential fatty acids in the right ratio in their diet, both for their own health and the health of their children. So it's a huge area. Attention deficit. We worked with kids who couldn't sit still and couldn't focus. And it started when they were teenagers. So they would sit still 45 minutes to an hour, do their work, their classwork. And then something happened and she couldn't sit still for 5 minutes. And so I said, how much does she weigh? 130 pounds. So I said, well, why don't you give her 3 tablespoons of the oil blend and see what happens? Because I'm not allowed to practice medicine, right? And so she calls me back 3 or 4 months later, crying on the phone. I said, okay, what did I do? She said, so what's up? Well, I did what you said, and she's getting A grades again. She's sitting in front of her computer 45 minutes. She can concentrate. And that's basically the oil made that difference for her. Right? So, and they learn, if your IQ goes up, you learn faster. Oh, very nice for skin. Skin gets them last and loses them first. So if you have dry skin, you haven't optimized your oil intake. And if you optimize it, they form a barrier, omega 3 and 6 together, form a barrier in the skin against the loss of moisture. You end up with soft, smooth, velvety skin. And when we did surveys, we sent out surveys, that's 76% of the respondents raved about what the oil had done to their skin. And then the next highest thing was in the 30s. And it was energy and other stuff. 76%. And we measure optimum intake by how skin feels. You need more in winter when it's cold because you burn more of it for heat in winter than you need in summer. I use maybe 4 tablespoons in winter and about 2 or 3 in summer to get the same skin feel, right? And because skin gets them last and loses them first, skin is a good way to measure your optimum intake. So then you say, well, you take whatever it takes to get your skin soft and velvety. And then the inner organs get priority on them, because if your heart dried out, you'd be history. But if your skin dries out, you can live with that. So nature is kind of wise. It gives priority to the inner organs for the essential fatty acid. So what else? Well, inflammatory diseases and most degenerative diseases have an inflammation factor. Omega-3s are super good in being turned into anti-inflammatory and antioxidant molecules that pick off free radicals in your tissues, because the free radicals is what gets you the inflammation. Why sugar gets you inflammation is because you got the fuel that makes the fire, right? You understand what I'm saying? You get the fuel that makes the fire. Fats are fuel, carbs are fuel. So you get the fire, but you have make a nice fire, you get sparks. Now you need spark control. Well, the antioxidants, anti-inflammatories are spark control. And the omega-3s are the only nutrient molecule that turns into its own spark control. So you burn 80% for energy, and it's best energy molecule there is. And then the 20% is converted into other stuff, including antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. And they make anti-inflammatories out of them just by moving double bonds in the molecule and turning them into conjugated systems that snag free radicals and stabilize them. And then they don't do damage. What the hell did he just say?
Well, you've kind of alluded to this already, but what's the most important guidance you can give our listeners regarding diet, exercise, and weight management?
Okay. Instead of listening to the advertisers, everybody has a good story to tell. Look at how it is in nature. Every creature in nature eats its food fresh, whole, raw, organic, local. And wherever you are in your food habits, go in that direction. Don't do it overnight. It takes time. Do it gradually. Eat more salads. That's one way to, instead of eating 2 salads a week, eat 4, right? And you have to make sure that the food is not contaminated by bacteria, because sometimes the reason we cook is to kill the bugs, and we eat dead bugs, but they don't infect us. But other than that, every creature in nature eats like that, and they're not having the degenerative conditions we do. Maybe there's something to be said for living in line with nature. And actually, health comes from living in line with nature and our nature. And I have 8 parts to my thing. 1 is the peace. The second is the love. The third is the inspiration. The fourth is the body, food and fitness, and rest and detox and digestion are part of that. So that's a body, protective mind, social. Hang on, I'm missing one. Protective mind, then social group, natural environment, and big picture, right? And each one of those is different in its nature and its function, needs a different kind of attention on a regular basis, goes off in a different way, and responds to a different kind of intervention. You have to give each one of those 8 its due. And it's not hard, but you can do that one by one. And if you're really smart and you feel heartache is the call to bring your focus back inside to the peace and the love that are your nature. It's triggered by things on the outside, because we, in our mother's womb, we were in deep meditation because there was no place to go and nothing to do. And everything was taken care of. And it was really boring, but we weren't bored. We were in bliss, right? So we were like little yogis in there for the whole time we spent there. Uninterrupted yoga for 9 months, day and night, right? Then we came out and everything changed. We had to get to know the world. So our focus went away from being at rest inside in its source, in life, in awareness. That's where it is when we're inside, right? It went from there, it went out into the world because we had to get to know the world of change, and we have to address it very quickly, because it's like when something changes, is it friend, is it foe, or is it irrelevant? We have to make that assessment quickly because it's for survival. So automatically our senses are drawn to change. So people also use that to get our attention. Hey, right? And So in that process of getting to know the world, we went from being present inside in our focus and absent outside to now more and more present outside, absent inside. And the absent inside is where heartache began. It's our disconnection from ourselves. And it's the call to bring our focus home. And it will not leave you. There are lots of things that you try to fix yourself on the outside. Nothing on the outside will fix your heartache, because heartache is only fixed by reconnecting to yourself, right? So it's the call to come home. It's very motivating. It's actually our driver for most people. It's the call to come home. It grounds you, makes you simple. It's the starting point for the journey home to yourself. And once you do that, then you'll start to get sloppy again and drift. And then the heartache will come back to remind you that it's important that you take time every day for that stillness, to be with yourself, to experience how incredible it is to be alive. Right? So each one needs attention. The most neglected are the inner three: peace, love, and inspired purpose. And why is that? Because we're always going out, do. We're human beings. We live like human doings. But if you think about it, being is actually more important than doing, because you can be without doing, like you did in the womb for 9 months, but you can't do without being. So guess what? Being is your foundation, and we are mostly living without foundation. And so we're discontent because we're disconnected, and that's why we're destroying the planet. Because that all comes out as expressions of discontent. When you're angry, you find enemies, even when there aren't any. When you're afraid, you find danger, even when there isn't any. Because what we experience comes to expression automatically. When you feel peace and love, you live into a world of peace and love, and all of a sudden you can get along with people and you say, hey, how can I help? Instead of killing each other, right? Even the war takes place in perfect peace. But the focus of the warriors, there's peace in them, around them, between them, above them, below them. Peace is there, but their focus is on, you're my enemy, I'm going to kill you. The other one, you're my enemy, I'm going to kill you. And then in a place of perfect peace that is everywhere, they have a war. Do we have to do that? No. If we do the homework, or if they did the homework, the warriors did the homework, and they felt that peace, they would put down their weapons, they would sit down, they'd say, you know what, this is stupid. How can we help each other make our lives better and make our children's lives safe? Because that's natural to human beings when they're in touch with the beauty of their own existence. So we're wired for that. 8 billion people could live like that, right? And then, of course, the stress that we get from not doing our homework, that makes you age faster too, right? So aging well require, you can be surrounded by stress and you can leave it outside. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. You don't have to have control over everything. You don't anyway, right? Because you don't make the leaves grow on the trees, and you don't make the wind blow, and you don't make the sun go down, and you don't make the rain fall, and you don't change the seasons. So you're living in a world where the surfaces of things change, and you can be okay with that. But that's easier said than done if you're not feeling peace, right? Because when I feel peace, I'm okay, and I get to like you guys, even if you're rednecks, or even if whatever it is, even if you're a different skin color, or even if you're a different gender, or even if you come from a different country, or even if you're a dog, or even if you're a tree, right? When I feel okay, when I'm okay because I'm present in my okayness, I don't have to have control over everybody's behavior. Wow, what a relief that is. Right? Oh my God.
Yeah, so we've covered a lot of ground in this episode.
We have.
In this interview. I think we can go on for hours. We probably only scratched the surface on fats, and we even kind of into the kind of well-centered aspect of things. But is there anything else we've missed? Anything else you want to add to the conversation?
No, just it's an invitation to do your homework. It's an invitation to all of us, including me, to do our homework, right? because we have everything. We have everything, most everything that we need to do to live a good life as long as possible. Doesn't even cost anything, right? That's us. And then we get back to gratitude with 2 T's, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Speaking of doing homework,
yeah.
Here is a question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, what are you doing personally to age well?
Well, I can tell you this. I got up at 6 a.m, and the first thing I did is I do my stillness practice. And I kind of joke. I say, well, when I wake up, I want to check in to see if I'm still there, because if I'm not there anymore, there's no point in getting out of bed, right? It's kind of a joke. But what I like to do is because when you dream, I have pretty active dreams, and you're not in charge of those dreams, and you wake up and your dreams affect your mood, right? But if I sit down and get to the still place, I have control. And I get to the still place and I feel the peace and I feel the love and I feel inspired. And then I go and do a little exercise, getting out of bed, and then I'm ready for the day, right? Now, what I did this morning, got up at 6, started doing the practice, fell asleep, which is why I was 10 minutes late. Fell asleep and I was like, oh my God. I looked at the watch, oh my God. And I ran, you don't even know if I'm wearing anything other than a sweater. Anyway,
I don't want to know.
No, I understand, and I will not stand up. Yeah, no. So what I do, I pretty much do that. I eat between 12 and 8, and I don't eat the other 16 hours. So it's intermittent fasting. Very good because it gives your digestive system a fair amount of rest, and it works really well for me. I eat mostly plants, mostly raw. I have a beautiful stove in my kitchen and I never use it. I just store stuff on it. And I go for walks, and I have a trampoline, and I have one of those shaking machines. That seems to be pretty good. Let's see, what else do I do? I have a grounding mat, and I like to go barefoot outside in the grass. Sometimes I sit by the water and I stick my feet in the water. That's a nice way to ground too, because you get in touch with whatever, if you wear rubber soles, it isolates the static, and sometimes in winter, you touch a piece of metal and a spark comes off your finger. Well, when you ground, that takes those charges out and keeps that balance. So I do that. And then I read. I just finished reading Peter Russell's book called From Science to God. He was a physicist who got into meditation and basically reconciles what we're looking for. Science and meditation are just different ways of exploring the world and getting to know how that works. Beautiful book. And he quotes some scientists and he quotes some spiritual leaders. So I read that, but I read stuff all the time. I read stuff about red lights are good for healing, and I'm always reading something. And I like the science stuff. I like the knowledge stuff. I don't read novels because I have a good imagination. I don't need to read pretend stuff. And because I'm a war baby, I really like the how things work stuff. So I do that, and I hang out with friends. I pretty much given up alcohol, not for any other reason other than I feel better if I don't drink than if I drink. I take vitamin C every day. I take 100 milligrams of B3. I take about 10,000 units of vitamin D. I have not had a cold for 5 years. I started doing that 5 years ago. Have not had a cold. I take electrolytes, and I use lots of herbs and spices, and my favorites: clove and cinnamon, cayenne, bacopa, turmeric, of course, turmeric and ginger. Can't live without turmeric and ginger. Garlic and onions. If you want social distancing, just eat garlic. You get safe distance from everybody except other people who eat garlic. And I'm 82, and I have a ton of energy. I have no aches or pains anywhere, except when I bang into something, or when I worked on a farm with a chainsaw the other day and dug out roots of weeds. And it was a really hot day, and we were there probably 7 hours. So my shoulders were sore, my back was sore, my ass was sore, my legs were sore. And 1 day later, it was mostly gone. 2 days later, it was all gone. Right? I brush my teeth with probiotics before I go to bed at night. I wake up with exponentially less severe bad breath in the morning. In nature, when creatures eat raw foods, there are probiotics on the food. So they always start in the mouth. When we take them, we just drop capsule in our stomach, but they have benefits in our mouth too. So I decided to do it nature's way. I'm always looking in nature. How was it in nature? I live in the city. How was it in nature? How can I copy how it is in nature in the city? And so I eat lots of seeds and nuts, lots of vegetables, some fruit, and you know what? Life is amazing. I don't know. Is that a long enough answer to your short question? Sorry. If I had to do just one thing, I would do that inner practice. That would be the number one thing. Because there's a time will come when food won't work and water won't work and air won't work, but peace will still be peace and the love will still be love. And when life and the body separate, I'm going to be going with life and peace. And that's forever. Right? So anyway, and because it's the most neglected. So if the most neglected things get the best results. It's like the oils in nutrition, the inner work for human nature.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We've mentioned your best-selling book and Udo's Choice. Where can the listeners find the book and learn more about you? I know the book is available on Amazon. That's where I purchased it.
Yep.
Are there other websites and social media you would like to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I have a website. It's called udoschoice.com. And that's about products. I also work with digestive enzymes and probiotics and fiber and greens. And then my other website is udoerasmus.com, and that's where I do all this kind of stuff about nature and human nature. My goal before I check out is to turn human nature into a teachable field and to turn total health based in nature and human nature into a teachable field. Because it's about time we knew how it works and weren't just guessing and throwing drugs that don't belong in the body at things that go wrong when we don't know what we're doing.
Well, this has been fascinating. There's a lot of great information, a lot of deep stuff to unravel and unpack. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time to join us on our podcast, allowing us to interview you, and always keep aging well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate what you do because this is more fun than talking to myself in the bathroom mirror.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.